in Job chapter 26. Lord willing, we're going to finish. It's supposed to be a short chapter, but there's so much in it. Wow. This chapter is just loaded. It goes from those first 4 verses that deal with a judgment, possibly the judgment seat of Christ. It could be the judgment of the nations. It could be the great white throne judgment for servants. It'll fit anybody. But it goes from that to where he starts describing the cosmos and going right in, just jumping off in the deep end into a 50-foot pool of water, and down we go. And we commented all the way down to verse 9. I guess I could read up a little bit of that. Let me start at verse 5. It says, dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. Now, that's where we start discovering this great deep. He's not talking about under the ocean. He said hell, even though that's under the water, I'll give you that. But he said, hell is naked before him, and destruction hath no covering. He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. Find out that God is directionally north. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds, and the cloud is not rent under him, or under them. He holdeth back the face of his throne, and spreadeth his cloud upon it. These, if you've been here, you know what I've taught about it. Some amazing verses. How Job knew that, I don't know. Just sometimes I think some of these men are under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and they are saying something, and I don't think they quite know, because they're telling us about the future. How in the world could that mean? And I'm just, sometimes when you're in a certain situation, what means something to you then means something different later. Has that ever happened to you? Well, maybe that's the case here. Next week we'll tackle that one. But let's look at verse 10. And again, he's talking about the cosmos. He's talking about the great deeps that are above our heads. He says there in verse 10, he hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end. And then I'm going to read verse 11 with it. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. Now, he's describing the cosmos that's found in Genesis 1, verse 2, or verse 3, if you want to pick it up there, to verse 31. He's talking about the recreation after the fall of Lucifer and I guess the angels that fell. And because he's starting to describe something that's these waters being bound, being placed somewhere, and then he keeps them there. God can do that. You've got to have something to contain water, a cup, a swimming pool or something. God just says, I just want you to stay right like that. And the water stays just like that. And we're talking about a volume of water that could make the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Indian Ocean and all the oceans and seas of this world like literally one drop of water in a bucket. He says about the nations, there is a drop in the bucket. So maybe that's what it was like. I don't know. But huge amount of water, and that's what he's talking about there in verse 10. So the great deeps are bound into place. Now look at Genesis chapter 1. Look at verse 4 and 5. He says, until the day and night come to an end. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Well, day and night didn't start with the sun, moon, and stars. You know what it started with? It started with God said, let there be light. Now, he said he separated the light from the darkness, and I'm going to make a guess of what that is. But in Genesis 1, 4, and 5, God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So I think if he's talking about anything, he's talking about that day and night coming to an end. And he says there, until the day and night come to an end. So what's interesting is that God had not divided the waters yet. This is day one. And he's already said this is day and this is night and separated them. But he had not divided the waters yet because that's the second day. That's when he creates the firmament called heaven, the outer space above our heads. So just on a guess, that anything below the waterline is darkness and night, and anything above that waterline is day? I mean, what's above the waterline? Huh? God, yeah, the throne, yeah. The third heaven. Well, it's even probably not three at that point. But that doesn't happen. Yeah. Okay, I tell you how you're reading that just a little bit further than you should. If you go over there to Revelation, it says that they have no need in the city for the light of the sun or of the moon or the stars, because He's the light of it. He's not the light of the universe. He's the light of a city. Okay? So there is going to be day and night. There is going to be a sun. There is going to be probably a moon. And we won't. We're in the city where there's no night. But, yeah, New Jerusalem. But there's going to be human beings that have partaken of the tree of life that are going to reproduce. Well, they're going to have typical days. Huh? We are in constant life. Yes. As long as we're in that city, we are. Now, I don't know if we ever get out or not. I don't think it's a prison. But I like to think that I get to move around a little bit. And
okay, we're to reign with Him. And you
yep.
talk about us.
That's millennium. Even though it goes into eternity, I don't want a millennium. There's no New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem does not come down till after the 1,000 years and after the great white throne judgment. What we have is Jerusalem, a literal city over there that becomes the place where, I realize this is all confusing, but that's if
you talk about us being on planets, they would inhabit planets.
That's in eternity. That's after the great white throne judgment.
Like you said, they'll still have day and night.
Yeah, because even though He's here and there's no temptation, there is still sin. They're sinful beings. And so we're dealing with this for 1,000 years. He's even throwing some in the lake of fire that rebel against Him. Then you have a rebellion at the very end. But that New Jerusalem doesn't come down out of heaven as a bride adorned for her husband until after the great white throne judgment, and the new heavens and new earth are created. Okay, now that's wherein dwelleth righteousness. There's no sin at all. Okay, that's right. Look, it took me quite a while to sort out all these things, and thinking, okay, well, what's here? And I'll tell you what, Revelation 22 don't make it easy on you, because it goes back and forth. It goes from the church age to the millennium to eternity, and you're just going, blah, 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 blah. And you've got to rightly divide it wherever it happens to be. That's why Dr. Ruckman taught me something very helpful. He said, it's not about saying Romans through Philemon is church age. There is tribulation doctrine in the Pauline epistles that you must rightly divide and put in the right place. You can find church age doctrine in James or in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, but you better be careful, because they were apostles to the circumcision. And it's possible that, and Peter, I can find just about anything. I mean, it jumps back and forth. Even eternal security jumps back and forth in the epistles of Peter. So it's just a matter of God showing you and rightly dividing that thing. It just takes some time. Let's see, where was I at here? Okay. Since God had not divided the waters yet, because that happened on the second day, then anything below the waterline would be darkness. He did not call it good. He did not call it good when He divided the waters on the second day. Remember, I told you that's the only day God didn't say, and it was good? He said the light was good, but when we get to the second day, He does not say, when He made that division and separated the light from the darkness, or when He separated the waters from the waters or whatever, He didn't say that was good. And you know why He didn't say it was good? Because there were principalities and powers in that deep. And He couldn't say it was good. He said the stars are unclean in His sight. The heavens are unclean in His sight. You see, what's that? The dark side. Isn't that what we all talk about? The dark side. Oh, He went over to the dark side. We're on the dark side. Because I know in heaven, God is light, in him is no darkness, man. It's daylight up there. Doesn't he talk about that thick darkness and all that? Man, we're shrouded in thick darkness. This whole universe is shrouded in it. You get out to outer space, unless you got the sun beaming in your eyes and you're close. You get out there ways, it's nothing but pitch darkness. So, you say, when will that day and night continue? Well, until the deeps are removed. Because that's how he established it. When he removes those deeps, man, we're not going to have day and night, at least for a while. Revelation 20, verse 11, and I saw a great white throne, him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there's found no place for them. Then, just a few verses later, in Revelation 21:1, he says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and what? And there was no more sea. Really, you don't think he's talking about the Red Sea, do you? He's talking about that thing called the Great Deep up there. That thing is gone. So in God's eyes, there's no day or night as far as that goes, because all of it's light. He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth after that point. Now, he does talk about ours, but it's a separate part. Talks about day and night. Well, summer and winter, I'm not even sure we're going to get rid of the seasons. I don't think they'll be very harsh. I think that, well, first of all, God can do anything he wants to do. You're not going to tell him he's got to do it the way I think he should. He's not going to listen to me. But I know when I think of this new heaven and new earth, I do not think of this new earth as being the same size. Not when like Jupiter's like 100 times bigger than Earth. Do you realize he could make that thing 1,000 times bigger than what it is now? With no oceans. How many people could you get on this planet if you didn't even have any oceans? It's 3/4 ocean or water. Can you imagine how many people you can get on this planet? We've got 7 billion packed away and there's still plenty of room. I know that Bill Gates doesn't believe that, but I believe. The problem is feeding all of them and, not having governments that are corrupt, that steal everything. The rich take everything, working with the thieves. But you get, if you could plant vegetables and fruit trees, and if you could plant that on any square foot of property anywhere on this planet, why, man, you could. Your garden comes up 4 times a year. That wears me out, man. It comes up 1 time a year. I'm like, oh man, I'm going out to pick beans. Pray for me. Huh? No more curse. Yeah, no more weeds. Now, if we can just get them fruits and vegetables to pick themselves, maybe they'll fly over to the dinner table. Thank God we get a new body, or I'll be just as lazy. I'm like, oh, I hate doing this. Revelation 21:1 says, and there was no more sea. That thing's gone. So, as far as God first identifying day and night, that's when it goes away. He says there in verse 11, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. Now, one thing you need to understand is that pillars are not always solid objects. Many times, probably most of the time, the Bible, when pillars are used, talk about a solid column that's holding up something. But it doesn't have to be something physical. And a lot of times the Lord uses that type of terminology. Well, for instance, Joel 2:30, and I will show wonders in heaven, in the heavens, and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. Well, there's where you got pillars and nothing but smoke. That can't hold up too much. He does mention Job 9:6, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. Well, are there actual pillars under this earth holding it up? Well, not according to what we just read in the verses up ahead where it says the earth hangeth upon nothing. Right? In 1 Samuel 2:8, he raiseth up the poor out of the dust and lifteth up the beggar from the dunghill to set them among princes, to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. Well, there he's talking about people. He talked about people being the pillars. Don't we have a New Testament verse like that? Galatians 2:9, and when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, well, they weren't marble columns, They were people, but they were pillars. Something, when God says the pillars of heaven, you say, well, is it literal? I don't think it is. God doesn't need pillars to hold up anything. He doesn't need them to hold up the earth. But He can use that as far as the foundation of the way a world system runs. I mean, the fact that, listen, this world is going down the toilet swirling fast at the hands of our politicians. Would you not agree? Man, the pillars have folded in on us. They are pillars of smoke. So, but in verse 7, you're told that the earth hangeth upon nothing, that it's just out there in space. And again, I've always said this, if there's one thing we learned on our Sunday school about concealed from Christians, is God conceals more than just the Word. He conceals His presence to a world that doesn't want Him. And they don't want Him. He'll never let them find Him. You won't find His DNA. You won't find a picture of the throne room anywhere. You won't find the deep. You won't find access through the deep. Why? He won't let you. And God does whatever He wants. He'll let you die and go to hell believing your stupidity and science falsely so-called and evolution just because you thought well, if I can see you, if I can examine you under a microscope in a petri dish, then I'll believe in you. Well, God doesn't have to lower Himself for anybody. And if you can't see God in this creation, I don't know what to tell you. You're stupid. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't know how else I can make it any lighter or just downright stupid if you can't see God in it. The complexity of it and the order of it. It's just, the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament declareth His handiwork. Every time I look up at the stars, I'm just fascinated. You want to get out there on a really dark night and just sit there in a lawn chair, it goes all the way back, and get you some binoculars and look up, and it'll blow you away. It will blow you away. And you know what God says? And He created the stars also. Ho-hum. Unbelievable. This God is mighty and great, and everything He says, you better take it seriously. And take what the world has to say with just a grain of salt. A good portion of the time, they're lying to us. That's sad, but it's true. Okay. I'll quit preaching, get on to the next verse. He says there in verse 12, well, He said the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at His reproof. We already talked about that. Now you got to remember, He's changing things. When he is speaking that recreation into being, and man, He is changing things. We're talking about nothing that a construction company can do, and God does it with words. So I guess that's, I could apply it that way. But in verse 12, it says, He divideth the sea with His power, and by His understanding He smiteth through the proud. And we had talked about this a little bit before. So we go from Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, down a little ways. All of a sudden, we're at the second advent, where He's making a way for Him to come down and come back. He divideth the sea with His power, and by His understanding He smiteth through the proud. So if we jump 6,000 years into the future, the second coming of Jesus Christ, where He'll divide the great deep and smite His way through the darkness, where the principalities and the powers and spiritual wickedness in high places dwell, which we have talked about I don't know how many times. You say, where are they at? They're up there. Some of them get cast out. They get cast out of heaven here. I don't know what's left. But think about this a second. Who swims around in that great deep? Huh? Look at Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 15. What's exciting is that we're going to get to experience all of this. In Habakkuk 3:15, look how this is worded. Thou didst walk through the sea with thine horses. through the heap of great waters. Now, I don't know about you, but if you take a horse into the heap of great waters out in the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, it'll drown. But not through these waters. Why? He makes a way. Doesn't the Bible say, Revelation 19:14, the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. If it ain't white and clean by the time you start, when you get through all that water, it'll be white and clean at the end. I'm just kidding you. You'll be white and clean from the beginning. But I mean, we're not even going to go through a wash cycle. I mean, we're going through dry shod. Why? The picture is the Red Sea. The children of Israel came through the Red Sea on dry shod. They were kicking up dust. Well, when the Lord makes a way through this great deep, a channel, when we come through there, we come through dry. In Psalm 68:22, the Lord said, I will bring again from Bashan, I will bring my people again from the depths of the sea. Remember what I told you? We're under the water. So everything that Jesus Christ did, there's a type and a picture. And when John baptized him, picture him going under the water and then back up through the water. That's exactly what he did, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Well, at least at the rapture, he's going to come and get us. And I mean, we get a couple trips through there. At the rapture, we'll go through the great deep. There'll have to be a channel. And then at the second advent, we'll go back through it again. Amen. Get to do some traveling. Not see the world, see the universe. You know? Huh? I mean, you know, I haven't got any farther west than Missouri. But when the Lord takes us home, man, we're going to get to do some real travel. Get to be able to see all the star constellations close up, you know, and be able to do some real traveling. Now, the next verse is going to define the proud, where the crooked serpent is the king over the children of pride. And it says he smiteth through the proud. I'm telling you, when he goes through that deep, because that thing, there's something wicked in there, something swimming around in there, and we got to fight our way through that thing, smiting all the way. Look at verse 13. It says, by his spirit he hath garnished the heavens, his hand hath formed the crooked serpent. Now let's give you a few verses on the fact that he garnished the heavens, not only with some evil things we're going to find out, but some good things. In Psalm 33, verse 6 and 7, it says, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. You know what he means by the breath of his mouth, right? Not that. He spoke it into existence. That's the breath of your mouth. God breathed. Inspiration is God speaking it. He's not only the Word, but he spoke this whole creation into existence. And all that magnificent universe out there, I'm serious, it just overwhelms me when I think of the volume of this thing, and they haven't even figured that thing out yet. It just amazes me that he's created all that real estate with incredible what he's created. And yet, you're worth more than all that to him. He created the stars also. That's all he has to say about it. Now, there's other verses that talk about him, that he made it and garnished the heavens, but one man is more important than all that real estate to God. I think because it's nothing for him to recreate it, make it better if he wanted to. I mean, I don't see him getting exhausted after he creates the new heaven and new earth. He doesn't even say he has to do it in 7 days. I think it's just instantaneous. It says he gathered the waters of the sea together as a heap. He layeth up the depth in storehouses. Again, those boundaries that it's kept there. Psalm 148, verse 4 and 5. Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens. See, there's water above the first two heavens. I'm not making this up, but really. I know some people, he ain't got no proof. Right there it is. The waters which be above the heavens, the first two. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for he commanded, and they were created. Talking about the host of heaven, stars. Genesis 1:16, God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. You know, it tells you what God's truly interested in. I know what other people are interested in. They're interested in real estate. They're interested in power and money. Who gets to control who? God's interested in the soul of a man. He's interested in those that should be in His image, but have fallen out of His image. And getting born again is nothing more than putting you back into the image of God so that He can fellowship with you again. And you're worth more to Him than all that. I think that's pretty good. But He garnished this with more than just physical stars. I'd love for him sometime be looking through the Hubble, you know. I mean, have you ever seen some of the pictures? They're strange, man. They're strange. Cloud formations almost look like there's a dragon wound up in that thing. Wouldn't that be something? All of a sudden they just start seeing this thing moving. What is that? You know, you think you're one of those Japanese movies, you know, about Godzilla? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, there's something up there, and it ain't good. Jude 13, or verse 13 says, raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars. That's why I think it might be moving. Yeah. Wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Do you really think that's some kind of sun? Planet? No. Why? Stars can be what? Angels. Where's that at? 120. He said, Revelation 1:20, the mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches. Therefore, you have a definition of stars that's other than some terrestrial or celestial body that's up there. God always has, I always wonder, why do we have these globes out there, these celestial bodies out there, and then it be connected to one of them, because that's where they're at. I mean, everything is telling you something ain't right. Even when you get off this planet, you think, I'm going to get off this planet. It's crazy. I'm with you, but where are we going to go? Saturn? Saturnalia? Jupiter? The chief of gods? Zeus? Or whatever? Where are we going to go? He said, that thing out there is more wicked than where we got right here. We'll talk about that in a second. This thing, the Lord's got to come back. We got to clean this thing up. Okay, I think I skipped a verse, but Psalm 68:22, the Lord said, I will bring again. I read that one, didn't I? Yeah, because the next verse deals with okay, yeah, I see where I'm at. Revelation 6:13, another verse about the stars. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Now, surely you don't believe that all the planets or suns or whatever that are up there are going to fall to the earth, right? I think it'd only take one. If Jupiter fell, I mean, it'd be like hitting a gnat. We would be the gnat, by the way. So, it's rightly dividing. Well, what's another definition of stars? Angels. Oh, these angels come down. They're cast out. They're cast down. Now, notice that the Lord gives Lucifer a makeover to match his character. Isn't that what it says? Look there. And by his spirit he hath garnished the heavens. His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. He didn't start off like that. You go and look at a description of him, I think it's Ezekiel 28 or Isaiah 14, I think it's Ezekiel 28. It says he's got these tabrets, he's got these musical things coming out of him. I mean, he's a musical creature. But it says that, his beauty is, perfect in beauty. It says he's wiser than Daniel. God didn't cut corners in making Lucifer. After he fell, now you ought to see. God said, I'm gonna make something for you to dwell in that kind of fits you there, pal. So he turns him into a dragon. turns him into a serpent, because that's what he is to God. So he's described in Scripture as a 7-headed, fire-breathing, aquatic dragon. Why? He's in that deep swimming around. And I'm not so sure he can't be in the universe. I don't know, because he talks about going in the earth, up and down in it. Now, I don't think he goes to it in the form of this great red dragon, but spiritually he can go up and down. I mean, he's got some power. God made him a powerful being. Now, compared to God, he said, I'll play with him like I'd play with a bird. But you and I, he is very powerful. You wouldn't want to go up against him without the Word of God. You wouldn't make it. None of us would. Revelation 17:3 says, he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. That's him. And if you don't know who the woman is, then you're really behind in your Bible study. Not talking about the church, but he is talking about a church. Whoever this woman is, Revelation 17, which you should be able to figure out, is sitting on that beast. They're in cahoots one with another. And notice it's a scarlet red. Isn't he a great red dragon? There you go. Now, there are 3 pictures of the serpent garnishing the heavens. Now, I got this from Dr. Ruckman. I couldn't have figured this out. You know the first one, Hydra. How many of you know what Hydra? Okay, yeah. Hydra is a serpentine water monster. It's a water snake. And I was going to try to do a picture. We had a tough time trying to print it out. Everybody just has black behind it. You know what it's like to print out a black photograph? Well, it didn't work very well. But this thing, the one that I got had 6 heads and not 7. Then it kind of dawned on me that one of those heads is wounded to death. Ends up with 6. Anyway, but Hydra is a serpentine water monster. Now, Draco, how many of you ever heard of Draco? If you looked in Greek mythology, he's under the foot of Hercules. But there is a star constellation by that name, Draco, and it's a multiple-headed serpent. You see, God's telling you what's up there, and he's telling you, I don't know how they name these things, when I see the hunter, and because almost all of them identify the Antichrist. Because Orion is a hunter, and he's got a bow in his hand. He's a bowman. God's telling you, just because I don't know how they named it like that, those 3 dots don't look like a belt to me, but who am I to argue with people looking up into space and saying, you know what that looks like? It looks like a dragon with 7 heads. Okay. I look up and I say, what? I'm just trying to find the Big Dipper, man. So I can locate the North Star so I know where God is. And then yell, please come back now. Doesn't help. But then there's Cetus, C-E-T-U-S. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And Dr. Ruckman says this, and it's also a constellation, but this Cetus has water coming out of his mouth to swallow a woman. Well, if you know verses, Job 40 verse 23 says that Leviathan thinks he can swallow up Jordan. That's what it says. He's confident he can swallow Jordan. And what happens is you have a flood in the tribulation, Revelation 12:15, that's to destroy the woman, but the earth opens up and swallows the flood. You remember reading that, right? Well, here they have the Cetus. It's some constellation. It's a sea monster. And I can understand why these people go here and they're sailing the Atlantic or the Pacific and they're worried about a sea monster. I understand why. It's all through the Bible. It's all through the heavens. Thing is, it's not up there. Or it's not down here, it's up there. Now, maybe there's something swimming around, I don't know, big giant octopus or whatever. There's probably things under the ocean we don't want to know about. I don't know. There's something about bases for aliens, Now, remember how I read all that, right? All of it. Wickedness spiritual wickedness in high places. It's all to bring about a antichrist, one world religion, one world government, one world dictator. I mean, that's setting the stage. And the devil doesn't care how he does it. He'll get it done. And the Lord's letting him. So I don't have any problem with telling me there's aliens. I just already know what they are. And whether they're an offshoot of something like the giants, they're from that spiritual wickedness. Okay. The Bible calls him Leviathan. Not Hydra or Draco or Cetus, whatever how you pronounce that. Psalm 104:26, it says, "There go the ships. There is that Leviathan whom thou hast made to play therein." I'm like, what ships? Huh? There go the ships? Where are they going? Let's take a guess. Somebody's coming down in ships. What was missing from the Bermuda Triangle? Ships, planes, metal. What's coming down? Ships. Look, there go the ships. And there's that Leviathan. He's right behind them. Come on, boys. Time for our summer trip. That's what it says. That's Psalm 104:26. Look at Isaiah 27:1. Man, you talk about a good verse. Now, I'm not going to give you everything about Leviathan because we got chapter 41 to go through it all over again. So I'm just trying to whet your appetite with this. Isaiah 27:1. It says, "In that day the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea." So when he talks about smiting through the proud, he's the king over the children of pride. We're going to kill that serpent on our way because spiritually he's here as a man. He has taken over a man's body. And evidently, if he's not already dead, we kill him on the way. He slays the dragon that's in the sea. Yes. You know what it says? It says that God would bruise Satan under your feet shortly. It hasn't happened yet. I hope you know that. It says he's going to, wound the serpent's head. Well, we get to help kill that dragon. Church. It says about the church, he'll wound Satan's head under your feet shortly. That's going to be second advent. I'm thankful for that promise. If he's messed with you like he's messed with me, you want to get in a few punches. And I think about all the people he's deceived and dragging them to hell or convincing them to go to hell, and it's just. And if you don't have anything against him, you will. Just stay right in there, man. You will. Now look at the last verse there. Like I said, we'll cover more about Leviathan, Job 41. The whole chapter's about him. It says, "Lo, these are parts of his ways." Now remember, the context is the Lord talking. He says, "By his Spirit he hath garnished the heavens, his hand hath formed the crooked serpent. Lo, these are the parts of his ways. But how little a portion is heard of him." And that is so true. What Job is saying there is that look at what is in this Bible and look how little people know. And we're scratching the surface here. Every time I tend to look, I keep finding stuff that's just beyond my depth that just goes so deep. But I mean, the rest of these people in this world and these churches, man, they're getting nothing. I'm saying most of them. Not all of them. But they're not getting anything. And I'm like, this book is just full of stuff. And you can't tell me they're stupid. They can memorize more than I can. They can piece together more than I can, but they can't find this stuff. Or, you know what's worse? They find it, but they don't give it to their congregation. Why? Why would you not give it to the people that are under your ministry? Didn't Paul say, I've not shunned to declare unto you the whole counsel of God? I mean, if I can figure it out, I'll give it to you. It's the only time you don't get it from me is when I can't figure it out, it's over my head. Now, a lot of it is. Most of it is. But I'm going to give you what I get. And if I can get it from Dr. Ruckman, or it doesn't matter who I get it from, G. John Rowe, whoever, I don't care. I'll take it. And I'll give it to you if I can. I thought that was my job. Be honest with you, I thought that was my job. He said, apt to teach. But I've seen pastors, they give it out so I mean, it's like they just got these little tidbits of nothing, you know? And they just... and then dump a gallon of milk to wash it down. And then, why would you do that when you can take a shovel and... oh, my shoulder hurts. I mean, why feed with a spoon when you can feed with a shovel? And why hold back when it's right there in front of you? I mean, it's like... Okay, so a very little portion of what's known or what's right here. And remember, we got the completed Bible, a completed revelation. There is no end. There is no end to what you can study in this book. Every time I just go through it, it's like, oh, I'll never get to the bottom of that. And then I'll never get to the bottom of that. I mean, it's just unbelievable how deep it is. I mean, when I think about this universe, this thing pales in comparison. Let me make that straight. This is far greater in depth than the universe itself. That universe has limits. This doesn't. You'll never study it out. Think you, oh yeah, I've read it 3 times. I got it. You haven't even got started yet. Anyway, turn to Luke chapter 10. We're going to finish up with a couple verses there. Luke chapter 10, he says, but the thunder of his power, who can understand? Now I want to make sure I've got this right said. Yeah, this is an example of how few are told about these wonderful things. In Luke chapter 10, verse 17 to 21, and the 70 returned again with joy, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject unto us through thy name. And he said unto them, now just imagine him saying this out of the blue. I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. I'd have went, huh? I mean, where's all the huns in the Bible? Huh? Huh? What did you mean by that? What do you mean you saw him fall, come down here as lightning? Then he goes on, he says, behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Notwithstanding in this rejoice not, that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. In that hour, it's after he's had this conversation where he says, I beheld Satan fall as lightning. In that hour, Jesus rejoiced in spirit, said, I thank thee, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that thou hast hid these things. What things? The devil's coming back. The devil's coming back. The devil's going to be here. Just like he was in the garden, he's going to be here. Thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent, hast revealed them unto babes, even so, Father, for so it seemed good in thy sight. God will hold back these things. He won't let them see it. And you say, but you would think they would see it after he shows up and he starts handing out the mark of the beast. They won't see it then. You know how blind this world is? So when he mentions there, but the thunder of his power, who can understand? John was forbidden to write about it, even if he did understand it, because he heard the 7 thunders and was going to write. And God said, no, don't write about that. Now, I'm just like you. I have no idea. It has something to do with power. Remember what he said? John 10, 3 and 4, and cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Probably like, uh-oh, here he goes. Look out. You know, I mean, that to me, because he roared like a lion. What's going to happen? The Lion of the tribe of Judah, before he comes back, he's going to roar. He shall roar from Zion. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. Well, the only thing I can tell you is, we'll be right there, sitting on our little ponies, our hearses, okay, when those 7 thunders utter their voice. Because when he roars, those 7 thunders utter whatever they're going to utter, we're going to be in earshot of it. Because he told John, he said, nope, that's a secret, write that down. He's concealed that from us for a while. But we know it's coming, right? By faith we know. There's going to be 7 thunders that utter their voices. Okay, I'll stop with that. We got through the chapter. Man, if the rest of them are like this, it's going to be 200 years before I finish Job. Because, man, that was only 14 verses, and it took 4 weeks to get through. So, some of them may be simpler, I hope, and not as much in them, but, man, this one was loaded. Any questions about what we covered?